Different times of the year, the seasons change, and some of us look forward to those change. Some of us don't. Some of us like it warm. Some of us like it cool. Some of us wish it'd stay in the middle, right? But anyway, I know this morning my wife was complaining about how stinking cold it was, and then she looks up and she goes, "The window's still open." The windows. I said, well, that could be part of it. But anyway, this morning I gotta kind of gonna go off last week a little bit, but my title of my sermon this morning is "A New Life Through the Spirit." In this world we have choices we make each and every day, and one of the greatest choices we can possibly make is to choose God. And the thing about it is that has always been a very important decision. But it's even, to me, it seems to be even more important right now because we have to make that choice. And you're going to have to make that stand. If you see the things going on in society and around us and, in our community, even our small communities, a lot of times, I think for many, many years, we've been pretty protected in rural communities of not, the world's not, it's somewhere else. The world is in Chicago or New York or these big places, California. But man, the world it's kind of creeping in on our little paradise, if you want to say. And it's important that we walk a life that we with the Spirit, with God's guidance, with God's protection. And the thing it is that for us to be successful in life, for us to have a good life, we need God. And God is what completes us. A lot of times we walk around and feel empty or just not quite like we should be, is because we're not full. The Bible speaks of God, when God becomes a part of our life, our cup runneth over. That means that He fills us over to the top and it runs over. And it also speaks is when we don't have God, it means our cup is empty. Okay, but the thing about it is our cup, if you want to use that as an example, is filled with something. Okay, we keep putting something in that cup. This morning I want to kind of focus on something. How many of you have heard of the fruits of the Spirit? The fruit of the Spirit, not fruits. How many of you have heard of the fruit of the Spirit? Right? We've heard of that in Galatians, and that's where I'm going to be this morning. But the love and joy and peace, etc. There's 9 virtues in that verse. But did you know that you can't experience real love and joy and peace and all of these virtues without God? That it is actually a gift from God. What is fruit? What is fruit? Fruit is a tree, a lot of times you'll have apples, and a lot of people are canning and doing a lot of stuff throughout this summer. But the fruit is something that takes a while to grow, right? It takes a while to mature and be there. And we're kind of like that fruit in a sense that is the reward, okay? The fruit of the Spirit is the reward for having a relationship with God. That is our reward, to have love and joy and peace and all of these things put together. And I'm going to describe these things. And I want to put it this way. I want to read a couple things here. So for most of us, we are in the rebuilding stage of our life. We've done a lot of things, made bad choices, done things we didn't want to do, and in our life, maybe just say it's a wreck sometimes. And we are in a rebuilding process. As all human beings, that as Christians, when we realize that we are sinners and we need Jesus Christ, that begins when we say yes to Jesus. We become in the rebuilding stage of our life. And that's something that is actually, when we get saved, you're saved. Okay, you don't work and finally get completely saved. When you ask Jesus to come in your heart, you're completely saved. But that rebuilding of your life, that rebuilding of our mind and our soul will take the rest of our life. Okay, I want to read this commentary here. It was in our Sunday school literature this morning. But it says, rebuilding requires courage and envisioning a new reality. A new reality. How many of us through the COVID realized a bunch of things, that some things were more important than you thought they were? How about just spending time with people and gathering with people and doing things? But we had a new reality, right? A lot of people said, when are we going to get back to normal? And they said, no, this is the new normal. Right? Do you hear people say that? Well, rebuilding for our life, to make our life better, is going to require for us to get close to God and let Him show us the new reality, how we can live life even though that we're living in a world that seems broke. Okay? So as we start in Galatians chapter 5 and verse 22 and 23, it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance, and against such there is no law." And this gives a description of the fruit of the Spirit, of what we can receive through God alone. You won't receive any of these things in your life, the real, unless you have a relationship with God. And I want to go through, kind of read through some of this here. I've kind of put it together as what the meanings of, but this meant the result, product, outcome, or effect produced by the Spirit in the believer's life. When we have all of these things, this is the reward you get in your life for that love and joy and peace and just contentment in our life. Unlike the gift of the Spirit, there's lots of gifts of the Spirit where people have the gift of teaching or preaching or prophecy and all these things. It says the gifts of the Spirit, plural, only some of which are given to a Christian. Each believer is to have all 9 virtues composing the fruit of the Spirit, singular. That means that every one of these I just listed right here that I spoke of, the love, joy, peace, long-suffering, patience, temperance, all of those, when you become a Christian, those are available to you. That's a resource that God will give us when we have a relationship with Him. It says, just like the fruit on a tree takes time to grow and mature, so the Spirit does not cultivate these virtues in the believer's life overnight. Okay? A lot of times I've given you the example of someone goes down up front and you're pouring your heart out to God and you just lay it all on the table, right? Lay it all on the altar. And a lot of times it's like we want to open our eyes and our life's changed. Well, a lot of times God answered our prayer. He heard our prayer. Maybe He's even forgiven us. But when we stand up, we still have the same life for right now. Okay? Some of the decisions we made, some of the life we've lived, takes a while to sort that out of our life. So it's a process. But I want to give you a description of each one of these virtues. Each one of these virtues and what they truly mean. Love is the willing, sacrificial giving of oneself for the benefit of another without thought of return. How many people in this world today truly know what love is? Honest love. Most love, or most people that talk about love, it's almost like a contract, right? If you give me this, I'll love you. If it's kind of one of those give and take. We think that you have to give me something for me to love you. It's not that way. It's talking about being selfless. It's about worrying about other people and worrying about their needs and you will never get anything in return. Do we live in a society that can do that? How many people have friendships just because what they can gain from that other person being a friend of theirs? They probably wouldn't be friends if they weren't getting something. It's just not being friends that like each other. We live in a society today that almost promotes that you go where you can gain something. But the most precious thing that we can possibly gain is a true relationship, right? The second one is joy. Joy is basically just the gladness of our heart. How many of us can just truly say, I'm happy? I'm just bubbling with joy, right? That's something that God can give us, is happiness of heart. For most of us, I think at times we say that our heart's broke or it's breaking, especially when we see things going on in the world or just things that's going on in our life. The next one is peace. This is the tranquility of mind, freeing one of worry and fear. How many of us worry? How many of us lay awake at night wondering about what's happening and what's going on in our life and how can I fix it? One of the greatest things we can possibly do is realize we can't, but know who can. that God can fix those things, that God can give us that peace that only that what we need. The next one is long suffering. This is one that we probably all could use a little bit more of. Is patient with others. The opposite of a short temper. I know a lot of us say, somebody needs to quit praying for patience for me, right? Because what happens when you start praying for patience? You start getting tested, right? Your patience get tested. I know a lot of people say, you talk about a short fuse, I don't have one at all. These are the things that we look at and we say, man, I'm only read a few of these right now. I'm on the fourth one. You're like, I'm not doing so well on this test right now. But I promise you, that's what it means, that we can't do this on our own. That we got to let God do it for us, because if we try our own way, we fail. The next one is gentleness, and that basically is just kindness, to be kind. Do you just know, probably each one of us just know somebody that's just kind. You say they're a gentle person, a gentle soul. And as Christians, I think that we sometimes, we're unreachable, if you will. And we can't be that way. People need to be able to come to us and know that there's a kindness about us. We're not like everybody else that's kind of raw around the edges. That no matter what's going on in life, that we there's good. The next one is goodness. And it basically talks of generosity. Are we generous? Are we generous with our time and our resources, and are we willing to help others? You know, it's sad today because of how dangerous this world is. You know, years ago, you see somebody broke down on the side of the road, or people somewhere, you just stop and help them and do things. And then this world has got so rough where it's almost scary to do that, right? And actually, I mean, we've told our kids, don't stop. Don't do that. Especially girls, don't do that, because you don't know what's waiting. I remember one time there was a lady pulled up on the side of a overpass, and she'd had a horse trailer with some horses, and she'd had a blowed out tire. And I stopped and I helped her, and she was terrified the entire time. Helped her unload her horses, got the tire off, and put a new one on, and just that mentality of just pure fear of what's this guy going to do, But that's where our world is at. But it doesn't. As Christians, we need to figure out a way to be generous. We need to be able to be willing to help others whenever we can. Okay? It's important. I think one of the things is to pray with people. Take that time to pray with them. Whatever we're doing, just stop and take time. The next one is faith. And what this word in this means in the Hebrew, in this tense right here, means to be dependable. Can people count on you? When you say something, do they know that's what you mean? Years ago, people shook hands. That's how they made deals. Their word, that was their contract. That wasn't some 10-page letter that you paid a lawyer $1,000 to write up for you. It was their word. It was their character. It was their reputation. As Christians, for us, we should be dependable. Our yes is our yes, and our no is our no. And if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it, and we're going to complete it. And that's something that helps. God helps us with that. What it does is it makes our witness so much stronger when we're dependable. The next one is meekness. And this is gentleness, that is courtesy and consideration in one's relationship with others. You talk about this meekness, it's talking about how do we treat other people. Think about that. Now that we have a list, right? You probably have the ones we treat nice, the ones that we don't treat nice, the ones we ignore. Think about it. Is there someone in the store, if you walk through Walmart and you've seen them, that you go 2 aisles and turn the other direction, right? That's tough because there is places and relationships that are on the edge, right? And we've been hurt, but it's talking about us consideration of other people. I want to go to the next verse now, verse 24. It says, "And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the afflictions and lust." What this speaks of is Christians, or those that are lost that can become a Christian. This speaks of our old life. What did Jesus do on the cross? He died on the cross. What did that represent? That represented a payment for sin. That represented the payment in full, right? So as Christians, what we do when we say yes to Jesus in the time of conversion, when we say yes, that is us putting our old life on that cross and being raised up from the grave into a new life. That's what that represents. That's what baptism represents, guys. When we say yes to Jesus, why was that the first order of obedience? Was because that represented the death, burial, and resurrection. That wasn't the end of the story. There's 3 parts to this. The death of our old life, we buried it, and the resurrection of the new life. Okay? So we got to crucify our old life. We got to crucify that and ask God to show us how to live the new way. Because we're awful good at being me, right? You say that? We're awful good at being myself. It comes natural, right? When something goes wrong, or you stub your toe, or you smack your finger with a hammer, what comes out? At 2 o'clock in the morning when you got to go to the bathroom and your pinky toe catches the edge of the bed and you go rolling across the floor. And them are just silly examples, but man, just think what happens when something kind of doesn't go right in life. What comes out? That's why we need to know that our strength comes from God. Because you know what? We're going to have those bad days that when you stub your toe, if we was in a movie, it might have went beep. Right? That's why God says, rely on me. Because honestly, humans, we're weak. We need God. The commentary here says when one gives their heart to Jesus, they crucify the flesh in repentance. He or she turned from them and renounced his or her life of sin and all its wicked ways. This verse then implies the virtues of verse 22 and 23 instead of the vices of 19 through 21, which should characterize the believer's life. Now, a week or so ago, I'll flip over and I'll just go ahead and read them. We didn't put them on the screen, but it talks about who we are without Jesus. And it kind of really opens our eyes to this. But anyway, 19 through 21, it says, "Now the works of the flesh are manifest, with which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variances, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envying, murder, drunkenness, reviling, and such like, of which I tell you before, as I have also told you in times past, they that which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God." And what it's talking about is when we give our heart to Jesus and we allow the Spirit to work in our life, those things are no longer a part of our life. That is no longer a description of who we are. I want to read 22 and 23 again, because these 9 virtues is what we can be through the strength and the guidance of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, and faith, meekness and temperance. Against such there's no law. You just compare the two sections of verses I just give you. The first ones, 19 through 21, is who we used to be. Through all of them things that I listed, you and me were some of them, right? If we're going to be honest with ourselves, that described who we were. But with Jesus and the Spirit moving in our life, we can have the last ones, the last 9 virtues. To me, that's between night and day. About who we used to be and who we can be. In Galatians 5:25, it says, if we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. It's important that we give our heart to Jesus and walk with Him. And walk with Him. We can't be part way. You know, a lot of times I kind of make fun or kind of razz some of the Chiefs fans here, right? But you look at these teams and you look at the different things, they either are all in or they're not. And when you sit down on a Sunday afternoon and watch a game or something, you can tell which ones are all in and which ones aren't. It's obvious. But man, that's in our own life too. We're either all in as a Christian or we're all in as the world. And whether we win or lose, it depends on what we put the most effort in. That what are we training for? You know, this Bible was written for you and me to know what the future holds and to be prepared for what is coming. There's nowhere in this Bible from Genesis to Revelations through all the Israelites' history that God wasn't telling them what was fixing to happen. They didn't get blindsided. In our studies on Wednesday night, which we just finished Jeremiah, we probably did 50 weeks, almost a year studying Jeremiah. But Jeremiah preached for 30 years to the Israelite people that they would be taken captive and made slaves if they didn't choose God. Every Sunday, there's people that come to church. Every Wednesday, there's people that come to church. You can turn your radio on to a Christian station 7 days a week and hear somebody preaching a sermon. Someone is trying to tell you to prepare yourself for what's coming. You look at the current events today and the things that are going on, not just in those faraway places, but they're right here today. Right on the Veda radio station or the newspapers, or you look at the things that's going on. Verse 22 and 23 doesn't describe people today. 19 through 21 does. And what he's telling us here, he's telling us, man, we can live life differently. How many of you have heard the song, Walk Like an Egyptian? Did that go through your mind? Some of you probably know the words to it, right? How many of you have ever looked at the videos, seen the music video of that? Most of us, a lot of us have. Some of the older people probably haven't, right? But basically, they're mimicking, acting like the Egyptians. Verse 25 speaks of is walk like a Christian. When we're walking down the road or into a store, does someone know we are a Christian? I want to flip over to Philippians 4:19 as we get ready to close. I think our struggle most of the time is trying to fit in or trying to gather what we need in life. Whether that be physical possessions, whether that be emotional, whether in relationships, we struggle with trying to get enough. Go back to the COVID thing and you think about your food and your supplies. What was your toilet paper? You never thought about having to worry about toilet paper, did you? All of those things made us kind of think a little bit, right? That if just everything, all resources just wasn't at our fingertips, that Walmart is not going to have an endless supply of everything we need, right? You kind of got a picture of that it wasn't just a resource that we was entitled to. That's more of a. But in verse 19, Philippians 4:19, it says, "But my God shall supply your needs according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus." See, the thing about it is when we give our hearts to Jesus, when we allow him to be number one in our life, he fills those voids we've been trying to fill with everything else. And it doesn't matter if the shelves are bare, or it doesn't matter what's going on in this world or in our communities. God will give you exactly what you need. In our Sunday school lesson this morning, we're in Ezra. And it's kind of neat how we started Ezra in this section, because Ezra speaks of the Israelite people leaving captivity that Jeremiah was involved in. And it starts talking about them being put back in their homeland and rebuilding the temple and starting to rebuild their homes. But this morning in our Sunday school lesson, it gives a description of all of the materials, all of the resources that God provided for them for their travel back home. What he done was he gave them everything they needed to be reestablished at home, to rebuild their home. I want you to think about this as you're in the rebuilding process of your life. That if you'll give your heart to God 100%, he'll give you all the resources you need to be successful and rebuild your life. But he won't do it unless we give our heart to him. He sits and waits for us to make that decision. It's your choice and my choice whether we have the love, joy, peace, long-suffering, patience, meekness, temperance, faith in our life. Or we have verses 19 through 21 describe who we are. It's our choice. I just want to ask you this one question as we get ready to close. Are you allowing the Spirit to lead your life? Or are you ready to begin letting him guide your life? It's that important, guys. It's that important. We're going to play an invitation song if God has spoken to your heart in any way. Take this moment, take this time to reach out to him, pray. And if your life is totally good and you don't need any prayer, pray for somebody else.